Don't you hear the Spirit call? Come just as you are. Come and see Christ the King. Come and live forever. Come just as you are. Oh, don't you hear the Spirit call? Oh, come just as you are. Come and see Christ our King. Come and live forever. Life everlasting. Strength for today. Taste the living water and never thirst again. Come just as you are. Oh, don't you hear Spirit call? Oh, come just as you are. Come and see Christ the King. Come and live forever. Life everlasting. Oh, and faithful today. Taste the living water and never thirst again. Come just as you are. Life everlasting. Strength for today. And to be able to taste the living water. And he said, when you taste that water, you'll never thirst again. That's a good thing. Say yes. Yes. And I had no idea that I was about to take a drink from that living water. I was surrounded by a lot of water at this time in my life, but I didn't want to drink any of it. Because I was serving in the United States Navy, which I probably served 4 years. And at this point in my life, I was on a 6-month cruise way over there in the Mediterranean Ocean in a place where I can't tell you where it was. Secret. I had a top secret security clearance, and I was a radio man, and so I had privy to information that used to come in and out, so I knew everything that was going on, what was happening, where it was going to happen next, who we was going after next. And I just saw some things and read some things that I can't tell you about. Well, I could tell you, but then I have to kill you, and I don't want to mess up my suit. This is one of my best blazers right here, so just leave it at that. A lot of water, a lot of time on the ship. But I got the opportunity to get off of the ship, and I got a cool opportunity to go on this tour to the Holy Land. How many of you have been to the Holy Land before? Whoa, look at all of those hands. Some of y'all people are really privileged. Like, y'all probably went on your own dime. Because, like, some of y'all actually got money. I went on Uncle Sam's dime. So actually, I went on your dime. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's the way in the Holy Land. It was kind of awesome. Like, I didn't really know. I knew there was this guy that they called Jesus, and he like grew up over there, and I didn't really know all of it because I wasn't saved like that. So the stuff that I'm telling y'all, this is BC. Somebody say BC. Somebody say before Christ. So all of this was before Christ. All that Navy stuff, this was before Christ. So I didn't really know like the whole severity of it all, but I knew something was special because they told me that this guy, Jesus, lived over there. And got to this point where they called the Wailing Wall. And this was really nice too. I went to the Via Dolorosa, I think they called it. We looked up at Golgotha's Hill, that place where they say he died, right? And then we got to this place called the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall. And there was these guys, a bunch of people over there doing their little prayers and stuff, and they had little hats on, they was doing little things. Y'all seen them do that before, right? I didn't really realize what was going on. And I'm from Detroit, so I was kind of disrespectful because I was just kind of throwing rocks over there because I just didn't have nothing better to do because we had to wait until they finished doing all that stuff. So I started throwing rocks. I just wanted to see if they could tell who the rock was coming from. I'm sorry, some of y'all looking at me. I said this is BC. I didn't know any better. And so when it was done with their little prayers and stuff, and finally got a little closer to the wall, I started noticing there was a curious thing about these huge bricks. I've never seen bricks that big before. But there was grass growing in between the bricks. And it kind of fascinated me because like I noticed them with these writing on these little pieces of paper, and they were rolling up the little pieces of paper and sticking them in the bricks, like in the walls of this paper. And this grass that was growing in between the bricks, I got a little closer because I wanted to see if the grass was some grass that I was kind of familiar with. Some other kind of grass, because the paper was there, you got the grass and you could roll it up, and I thought the vacation was getting ready to be real nice, but it wasn't that kind of grass. It wasn't that kind of grass. And so I got up just a little closer to the wall, and I touched one of those bricks, those biggest bricks I've ever seen in my life, and I touched one of those bricks, and when I touched that wall, everything changed. There was this light, and it was the whitest light that I've ever seen in my life, never seen it since. Everything disappeared. But it didn't blind me and it didn't hurt, but everything, the wall disappeared, the people disappeared, everything disappeared around me, and there was this light. And then there was somebody standing behind me. And I didn't hear anybody walk up behind me. I just knew that there was somebody standing behind me. And I started trembling. And I wasn't trembling because of fear. I was trembling because of this reverence that I had never felt before because of this person that was standing behind me. And I'm telling you, it wasn't a tour guide. It was Jesus. And I knew it. He didn't have to say a word. By his spirit, I knew that it was Jesus standing behind me. Now, you're not talking about somebody who was raised in church, because some of y'all raised Baptist, and some of you raised Catholics. You know, I was raised in a cult, C-U-L-T, a cult. They never asked that when they asked what kind of church was you. They never asked me if you was raised in a cult. That was me. I was raised in a cult. And I knew something about this, but I knew for sure all the stories were true at that moment. He was standing behind me, and I was terrified. Not because he was terrifying, but because I knew I was in the presence of holiness, and I'd never experienced anything like it. There was one thing weighing deeply upon my heart. When you're in the presence of holiness, all I could think about was my sin. And there was one sin that was heaviest on me. And it was all I could think about in this moment. I had a whole bunch of them because I told y'all, some of y'all was born saved, I wasn't. I wasn't born saved. And so there was a whole bunch of sin, right? But there was one that I kept thinking about. It was a sin that I had just committed not long ago. Before that day. Because before that day, not long ago, before I left left on the cruise, man, I was 19 years old and I was living for myself. I was in the Navy, away from my parents in the 30 for the first time, and I was living with a girl, and she told me she was pregnant, and she was already the mother. She had 2 little girls by 2 different other guys, and I didn't want to be her 3rd baby daddy, as we call it, and so I dropped her off at the abortion mill. That was a moment that changed a lot for me, because living for myself, and I committed a lot of sins, this was something that I knew was wrong, but I felt like it was my only option. And I'll never forget dropping her off at that abortion mill in Newport, Rhode Island, and this brown brick building with the dark tinted windows, and she got escorted in there, and I was sitting in the car. I got to just sit in the car while she went in and took care of my business. And I'll never forget this lady who was standing outside. I'll never forget this white lady, old white lady with the silver hair, shoulder length, and she was holding this sign with these short sleeves on these little frail arms, holding this sign, and you could see the blue varicose veins in her arm, and she kept staring at me. And I don't know why she kept staring at me. Some of y'all do that. White people do that. They just stare at you sometimes, right? It's just not like that in my culture. I mean, from Detroit, man, if you've ever been to Detroit, just don't stare at people too long, right? If it's more than 2 or 3 seconds, they're going to come and say, is there a problem? And if you don't say the right thing, you're going to have more trouble on your hands than you really expected. Just don't stare at people that long. I spent 20 years in South Carolina. They did that same thing, and she was staring at me. And I tried not to look, and I looked down, and I kept looking at her. She's holding that sign, and she kept staring at me. And I finally looked at that sign in words I'll never forget. Everyone who chooses abortion had a mother who chose life. 44 years old, I still remember the sign, I still remember the lady. And that young girl came out of the clinic, the abortion mill, got in the car. I looked at her, I said, it's done. She said, it's done. She crumbled into a bucket of tears, and we were done. We were done. So right there at that moment at the wall, I couldn't believe that this holy man standing behind me would want to face me and be in the same space with me, but he was right there, and I felt all of the love that I never had experienced before from my dad, because my dad was never there. All of the love that I never experienced, it was upon me right there at that moment. So he wasn't this terrifying guy. He was complete love, and I felt it right at that moment. And all of my sins were being washed away. And right in that moment. And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that this guy standing behind me loved me with all of his heart and all of his life. And I heard these words, not audibly, but words were pressed upon my heart that said, I have called you into ministry for such a time as this. And I responded, I don't know what ministry is, but it must be in pretty bad shape if it needs someone like me. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I accepted Jesus that day, right there at the wall, and my life changed in a powerful way. When I got back to the States, I began to learn about this guy that I had met and studied and walked in ministry. I was ordained a minister, and it came to a point where There was a time in my life where everything was falling apart, and I wasn't really sure what the next step was, because he said he had called me into ministry, and I was ordained in ministry. I was ordained in ministry, and I'd done some work in church, but I just felt like there was something else. And there had to be something else, because what I had held on to and the things that I had built were falling apart. See, I was a husband, and I was a father of 5, and then this marriage that I thought was everything to me, it was falling apart. Somehow, I just don't understand that when I accepted the call in the ministry, the enemy went after the things that I held most dear. And I saw 21 years of marriage dissolve into a divorce that crushed me. I had no control. The woman that divorced me was not the woman that I married. I got no idea what happened. I'm just telling you, alcoholism is a terrible thing, and if you have ever experienced it, you have been through something, my friend. I lost it all. So I thought. And then God showed up again. Not physically, but in a phone call, because I was sitting in the car and everything, I was just discouraged. Man, everything. I knew the divorce was happening, and I knew there was nothing that I could do about it. And I tried the marriage counseling. We tried to go to all of the classes. None of that worked. She just wasn't interested. It was just bad. And I was just sitting there in the car, and I got a phone call. Says, hello? I said, hey, bud, it's your auntie. I said, hey, auntie, how you doing? She said, hey, bud, I need to tell you something. I said, okay. Tell me something, auntie. This is my auntie. She was really cool. I lived with my auntie the last 4 years of my teenage life. I went to high school. The last 4 years of my life, I lived with my auntie in Detroit. And she says, I just need to tell you something. I says, go ahead, auntie, tell me. She says, I'm not really sure what you're going through right now, but God pressed upon my heart to call you and encourage you that you shouldn't be here. I said, well, what do you mean? What do you mean, auntie? She says, see, back in the day, when I was about 20, I was a nurse, and I had gotten pregnant, and it was an unplanned pregnancy situation. And back in those days, in the olden days, don't tell her I said the olden days, she might kill me. But back in those days, abortion was illegal in America. And she said I had gotten pregnant, and I just couldn't go through with the pregnancy. And she said I took my experience as a nurse, and I used some equipment to perform an at-home abortion procedure. And she said, yeah, as a matter of fact, it happened twice. And she said the second time I even held a little fetus in my hand. I was like, ew, that's nasty. Why are you telling me that, auntie? And she said, well, I just want you to know, because I don't know if you know this about your mom. So your mom was 17 years old, and she had already had 2 little girls, and there was just some terrible things going on in the household. She was already divorced at 17. How are you already divorced at 17? And she said she was being kicked out of the house because, the parents were blaming everything on her, and it was all her fault, and there was just all this stuff happening, and she was being banished to Detroit. And I just didn't know how she was going to make it. She had 2 little girls already, 1 and 2 years old, and then we found out she was pregnant. How in the world was she going to take care of 3 kids on her own on the streets of Detroit? And so I wanted to help her. And so I took that same kit over to the house, nephew. And she said, I performed that same procedure on your mother when she was pregnant with you. And it should have worked. And you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. She said, so I don't know what you're going through right now. I just got a feeling in my spirit that you're discouraged. But she says, I want to encourage you that God has a touch on your life, and you need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get about your life. Boy, did I do exactly that. I started learning more about my story. I wanted to learn about my mom's story and what she went through and what got her in that situation, and learn about my dad who was never there, and how this is how because a lot of people ask me, what kind of relationship do you have with your mom? I have a great relationship with my mom. We share the stage often. Boy, you ought to hear my mom's story. And that's how I got to the place where I wasn't angry with my mom. I started to learn her story. Repeat this after me. Everybody has a story. And that's how you alleviate any kind of anger or whatever you feel about them. You just take some time to learn their story. And when I learned my mom's story, I learned my story. And I learned why God called me into ministry. And I learned why shortly after that I learned about these pregnancy resource centers. And I started volunteering. And I started telling my story about being an abortion survivor. And I was volunteering. And like 4 hours a month, I was volunteering for the men's side of the ministry. And this young man came in with his girlfriend, and they thought it was an abortion bill. But it was a pregnancy help center, like what's happening at ENLC. And I was there volunteering. And I'm telling you, some great things happened. When that young man came in, and he looked at me, he said, Henry, man, my girlfriend is pregnant. And he just stared at me like that. And I started thinking to myself, why are you staring at me? I didn't do it. So I began to talk to him and share my story. I said, look at my story. Take a look at my website. Man, here's my video. Man, you can do this. We can do this together. I'll help you. This resource center is here for you, man. You just scared. Abortion is not what you want. It's not what you need. You're just scared. You need to be relief from the fear. So here's what happened. And listen to this, Knights of Columbus. You better listen to this. I left the man cave and I took him to where the ultrasound machine was. And this guy named Chris, and he shares his story over and over again when we share our story from the stage. He says, man, when I saw the ultrasound, I saw my child. And everything changed. Do you have my picture, Sam? Everything changed. And this guy chose life. Look at him. Look at Katie. Man, this is some powerful things happen when they look at that ultrasound and they see their child. If you will, clap your hands for the Knights of Columbus who donated that machine. He saw his child. And what I saw was why God chose me for this powerful work. And ladies and gentlemen, I am telling you that I am here to say that when God says life, no man can say death. When God says life, no man can say death. Say it with me. When God says life, no man can say death. That's the power of this work that we do every day. And you as donors and volunteers and staff members and your prayer warriors, you have the opportunity to get involved and to see lives change in a powerful way on a daily basis. To be able to mentor Chris and to see his life change over the course of the few years that we've known each other since, man, there's no greater work than what we do here. And that's the work that you're supporting today. One person making a difference in someone's life can help you understand why God has called you to do this work. One person. You may be somebody that's there at the pregnancy centers meeting people's needs in a real way. You may be somebody that writes a check in a powerful way. It's a 6-figure check if you want to. I mean, just power you behind that. I'm just saying. Do it. Somebody had to write a check for that ultrasound machine, and I'm telling you, Knights of Columbus, that was no small penny. Ask them how much an ultrasound machine. Now they got 4D ultrasound machines. Google that and see how much that costs. You better write that check. Write it. You change lives. And there's nothing more powerful than a life changed. And when you launch yourself into this work, I'm telling you, there is a reward. Because when I thought I had lost everything, and I curled up my lips to say that I wanted to get involved in this pro-life work, and the enemy went on the attack on my personal life, and I thought I lost everything. Boy, God just seems to show up. And the things that the thief has taken away from you in the past, he returns it sevenfold. My fiance looking down there, looking up at me, y'all. God is a restorer. He can give you back everything that you think you lost when you trust him. When you trust him. And today they're going to ask you to trust him with your giving. There is no greater work than what happens at places like ENLC. Man, we got some cool stuff going on in Washington. We got the opportunity to see Planned Parenthood possibly defunded. Come on, somebody. It's happening. We've got a Supreme Court justice that was confirmed today. Come on, somebody. Now is the time, folks. There's not a greater time to be involved in this work. But you just have to ask yourself, what part do you want to play in this goal of saving 2,500 babies this next year? How big of a role do you want to play? And how much do you want to trust God with the resources that He has given you? 2,500 lives. We just missed the goal last year, but we can do it again. If you agree with that, we can do it this year. Say yes. We can do it. Absolutely. Come on, clap your hands. We can do it. 2,500 is not a small thing. When you trust God with your small things. And I know you're going to do it today. I have given my life to this ministry. And so many death-defying experiences in Detroit. Growing up on the streets of Detroit, gang violence, drug activity, all those kinds of things. I lost so many friends and family members, man. It was just sad. But to be where I am today and to experience the things that I have experienced in my life today, and to be able to stand for those who cannot stand for themselves, to be the voice of those who have no voice, man, to be the guardian of those who cannot guard themselves, there is no greater calling. And all of you have that calling here tonight. And I know you're going to respond tonight. When I was in Detroit and I was considering whether or not to join the Navy, I knew I wanted to get out of Detroit. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. I sat and listened to a guy named Les Brown. This guy inspired me. I was 17 years old and I had no idea what I was going to do. But after I heard him speak, I signed up for the delayed entry program in the Navy. Like, I was able to sign up as a junior in high school. And like, I signed up a year early, so I hid for the next year of my life. I kid you not. Because I didn't want anything to stop me from the rest of my life. Because I heard this guy, Les Brown, and he inspired me so I believed that I was going to be something. And that I was going to do something on this earth. And that I was not going to be like many of my friends and family who end up dead or in jail on the streets of Detroit. I was not going to be like those people. When I heard Les Brown, man, I was inspired. 17 years old, I heard him speak. And he ended and closed with a poem that I close with today. I'll never forget it. And I hope it inspires you today the way it inspired me those so many years ago. And I quote it to myself over and over again when I have a down moment and think I can't do it. I remind myself of that inspirational moment that got me from where I was to where I am right now, living a life that I love. Maybe you'll inspire yourself as you push towards this goal of 2,500 lives saved in the next year. Les Brown looked at me and he said, how bad do you want it, son? How bad do you want to make it out of Detroit and make something of yourself? How bad do you want to reach the goal? How bad do you want it? He said, if you want a thing bad enough to go out and fight for it, to work day and night for it, to give up your time, your peace, and your sleep for it. If all your dream and scheme is about it, and life seems useless and worthless without it, and if you gladly sweat for it and fret for it and plan for it and lose all your terror of the opposition for it, and if you simply go after that thing that you want with all of your capacity, strength and sagacity, faith, hope and confidence, and stern pertinacity, if neither cold poverty, gaunt, famish or pain, sickness or pain, body and brain can keep you away from the thing that you want, if dogged and grim you besiege and beset it, then with the help of God, you'll get it. My name is Henry Flowers, And with your help and with God's power, I survived an abortion, but I declare to you that abortion will not survive me. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless you all.